Guests of the Nation by Frank O'Connor, 1903 to 1966. 1. At dusk the big Englishman, Belcher, would shift his long legs out of the ashes and say, "Well, chums, what about it?" And Noble or me would say, "All right, chum," for we had picked up some of their curious expressions. And the little Englishman, Hawkins, would light the lamp and bring out the cards. Sometimes Jeremiah Donovan would come up and supervise the game and get excited over Hawkins's cards, which he always played badly, and shout at him as if he was one of our own, "Ah, you devil you, why didn't you play the tray?" But ordinarily, Jeremiah was a sober and contented poor devil, like the big Englishman Belcher, and was looked up to only because he was a fair hand at documents, though he was slow enough even with them. He wore a small cloth hat and big gaiters over his long pants, and you seldom saw him with his hands out of his pockets. He reddened when you talked to him, tilting from toe to heel and back, and looking down all the time at his big farmer's feet. Noble and me used to make fun of his broad accent because we were from the town. I couldn't at the time see the point of me and Noble guarding Belcher and Hawkins at all, for it was my belief that you could have planted that pair down anywhere from here to Clare Galway, and they'd have taken root there like a native weed. I never in my short experience seen two men to take to the country as they did. They were handed on to us by the 2nd Battalion when the search for them became too hot, and Noble and myself, being young, took over with a natural feeling of responsibility. But Hawkins made us look like fools when he showed that he knew the country better than we did. "You're the bloke they calls Bonaparte," he says to me. "Mary Bridget O'Connell told me to ask you what you done with the pair of her brother's socks you borrowed." For it seemed, as they explained it, that the 2nd used to have little evenings, and some of the girls of the neighbourhood turned in, and seeing they were such decent chaps, our fellows couldn't leave the two Englishmen out of them. Hawkins learned to dance the walls of Limerick, the siege of Ennis and the waves of Tory as well as any of them, though naturally he couldn't return the compliment because our lads at that time did not dance foreign dances on principle. So whatever privileges Belcher and Hawkins had with the 2nd, they just naturally took with us, and after the first day or two we gave up all pretence of keeping a close eye on them. Not that they could have got far, for they had accents you could cut with a knife, and wore khaki tunics and overcoats with civilian pants and boots. But it's my belief that they never had any idea of escaping, and were quite content to be where they were. It was a treat to see how Belcher got off with the old woman of the house where we were staying. She was a great warrant to scold, and cranky even with us. But before ever she had a chance of giving our guests, as I may call them, a lick of her tongue, Belcher had made her his friend for life. She was breaking sticks, and Belcher, who hadn't been more than 10 minutes in the house, jumped up from his seat and went over to her. "Allow me, madam," he says, smiling his queer little smile. "Please allow me." And he takes the bloody hatchet. She was struck too paralytic to speak, and after that Belcher would be at her heels, carrying a bucket, a basket, or a load of turf as the case might be. As Noble said, he got into looking before she leapt, and hot water or any little thing she wanted, Belcher would have it ready for her. For such a huge man, and though I'm 5'10" myself, I had to look up to him. He had an uncommon shortness, or should I say lack, of speech. It took us some time to get used to him, walking in and out like a ghost without a word, especially because Hawkins talked enough for a platoon. It was strange to hear big Belcher with his toes in the ashes come out with a solitary, "Excuse me, chum," or "That's right, chum." His one and only passion was cards, and I will say for him that he was a good card player. He could have fleeced myself and Noble, but whatever we lost to him, Hawkins lost to us, and Hawkins played with the money Belcher gave him. Hawkins lost to us because he had too much old gab, and we probably lost to Belcher for the same reason. Hawkins and Noble would spit at one another about religion into the early hours of the morning, and Hawkins worried the soul out of Noble, whose brother was a priest, with a string of questions that would puzzle a cardinal. To make it worse, even in treating of holy subjects, Hawkins had a deplorable tongue. I never in all my career met a man who could mix such a variety of cursing and bad language into an argument. He was a terrible man and a fright to argue. He never did a stroke of work, and when he had no one else to talk to, he got stuck into the old woman. He met his match in her, For one day when he tried to get her to complain profanely of the drought, she gave him a great come-down by blaming it entirely on Jupiter Pluvius, a deity neither Hawkins nor I had ever heard of. The noble said that among the pagans it was believed he had something to do with the rain. Another day he was swearing at the capitalists for starting the German war, when the old lady laid down her iron, puckered up her little crab's mouth and said, "Mr. Hawkins, you can say what you like about the war, and I think you'll deceive me because I'm only a simple poor countrywoman. But I know what started the war. It was the Italian count that stole the heathen divinity out of the temple in Japan. Believe me, Mr. Hawkins, nothing but sorrow and want can follow the people that disturb the hidden powers." A queer old girl, all right. End of part 1.